ask you a question. When you buy a game on the Nintendo eShop or Steam or what have you, how much do you really weigh that purchasing decision? Because ever since I went back to buying my games physically, I've noticed that I've had an easier time finishing them. And one of the biggest things I've realized about myself is that I buy a lot of games and I don't finish them. I think this year I could probably count on two hands how many games I've finished versus the ones I've I don't even want to know how many I've purchased this year. And that bothers me a lot. I've been paying all this money for all these cool experiences and I'm not enjoying them. So what I want to talk about today is how buying physical games has completely changed the way I approach gaming for the better, I would say. Now, there's a couple things going on in my life that have kind of led to this video. One of them is that I realized I was spending a lot of time doom scrolling on my phone, mostly before bed, which is the worst time. You want to infect your brain with all the horrible things going on in the world. I like to stay aware of the things going on in the world, but maybe before I go to sleep for the night is not the best time to do that. So slowly but surely, I've been replacing my phone time with handheld console time, and that has done wonders for my sleep schedule. I'm sleeping better, I'm waking up with more energy, and creatively speaking, I'm having a really good time coming up with ideas again. I'm feeling more creative and just my mind feels lighter. Maybe this looks different for a lot of people. For you, it might be reading books or listening to audiobooks or podcasts. For me, gaming is just like my go-to activity. The other thing that's led to this decision is the countless stories about ownership of things that we buy digitally actually not existing. You really own a license to that. One of my favorite examples to point to is when Valve said that if we die, we can't pass our games along to anybody. Those licenses expire when you do, which is dark, but that's just what we're signing up for with our big digital libraries of games. But with physical media, whether I die or I just get tired of it, I can take Donkey Kong Bonanza and just give it to somebody else in the family. And I think that's pretty cool. But the other thing I noticed about having physical games over digital ones is that when I bought this, I put it in a very specific place in my house, and I didn't do this on purpose. I put it right on top of where the TV sits on our entertainment center. And I kept walking by that spot every day, and I'd see this cover there, and I would go, oh, you know what? I should play that today. And it kind of like did what advertisers hope they do when they show you Coca-Cola over and over again. The next time you get thirsty, they hope you pick up a Coca-Cola. I did to myself. Pure consumerism that I just opted into by putting this on my table. I was like, I know I want to play that. But what that did was it actually got me to beat it. And I don't, like I was saying, I don't beat a lot of games. So I've learned that this for me was kind of the equivalent of just like setting a reminder in your phone to do something every day, just making it part of my routine. Like before bed, I play a game. What game should I play? Oh, well, I just kind of put this on a little pedestal. And it was just my reminder that, well, you bought this for $70. So maybe you should play that until you're done with it. You can have your ice cream when you finish your broccoli. And then if you watch the main channel, another reason this has become really important to me is because eventually the Switch 2 will be a thing of the past. By the time we're up to the fourth Switch or whatever they call it by then, the Switch 2 will be a memory. And I don't know what Nintendo's plans are to help us preserve our digital games. Is it going to be like the Wii, where if my Switch 2 dies finally, or I decide to sell it or whatever, there's no way to back up those purchases if I go, wait, I want to play Donkey Kong Bonanza again. I don't know what the future holds, but I certainly know what it looks like today to try and go back to the past and play older games. Maybe they do a remake of Donkey Kong Bonanza, but some licensing deal we don't know about means that the game sounds different or looks different for some reason, like what happened with the Grand Theft Auto trilogy. I think Nintendo probably doesn't do a lot of those licensing agreements, probably a terrible example, but the Grand Theft Auto trilogy was missing tons of songs on all the radio stations because the licenses to that music, that all ran out. So they're telling us, hey, remember Grand Theft Auto Vice City? You can buy that again if you want to. And it's like, it'll look nice on your modern display. Cool. I loved that game. I would play that again. And it wasn't the same experience, not because it wasn't how I remembered it, but because it literally wasn't the same experience. Companies today in the various media industries that we all enjoy are not built around preservation of that media. Media to them is just a product, like bread. You know, they're just selling you a thing, and they need to sell that thing to you however they can. So if that means temporary licenses that eventually expire, well, hey, at least we made our money now. And by the time this stuff becomes irrelevant, the executives who made those decisions have moved on to other companies, and no one cares. No one is there to back up those purchases. Or better yet, they just repackage a thing and sell it to you again, but on modern consoles. But as modding consoles has taught me, if I had just held on to all of my older games growing up instead of using them as currency to buy new games from game stores, I would be able to take those games that I own and take my modded device and rip them onto the device and then play them on modern hardware myself. I can upscale them myself through emulation. Because those things are mine and I own them, I have a tangible cartridge, I'm able to do that because these executives can't bust down my door and take games off my shelves and run away. And the other reason I've been buying this stuff is because I know that eventually they're probably not going to keep producing physical media, which sucks to say out loud because I'm really into it right now. But I think there comes a time where it's no longer worth it. And maybe it's better for the planet if we're not generating a whole bunch of plastic, but it's no longer worth it to be taking this stuff and distributing it in this manner when we have all this technology to make it so easy to get our hands on it digitally. But because I've seen now what can happen in the worst case scenarios when ownership and media preservation isn't respected, buying the physical version of a thing is how I support the industry a little bit and let them know that, like, with my dollars, like, hey, thank you for giving me Donkey Kong Bonanza on the cartridge, not a game key card, so that I can like have it physically. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to reward you with that now with $70 of my money for the physical version of it. My naive hope or cope is that if we do that enough, physical media gets to survive because there's a market for it still. The profit that they get from it still makes sense. It still makes sense to generate those things in a physical form because people still rely on them. So the claim I'm making is that I'm done buying digital games, but I know that's not realistic. Dinkum, for example, is coming out on Switch and they currently don't have a physical version. They will, supposedly, maybe, but I didn't want to wait around for maybe. You know what I mean? So here you go. There's going to be times where I still buy the digital thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I would do this if they were promising, no, on November 5th, we're going to also have a physical version. I would just get that and I'd wait a day or two for it to get to my place. As I work towards collecting more and more of this stuff, I'm trying to just do so with realism in mind. Not every game is going to have a physical release. Also, just because something has a physical release doesn't mean I have to buy it. I'm actually spending less money now because I'm curating the games I actually want to play. And that is doing wonders for me actually beating games. So I guess to sum all this up, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've started a podcast. I'll link it down below. I'm actually going to cover this topic in a future episode with a guest, so it's not out yet at the time of recording this, but check that out. And the first episode was about my friend Wilbo, who lost all of his retro games because they were thrown in the trash. And he's working on rebuilding his collection. He has some interesting stories. He also has some tips on how he's trying to do so, like rebuild his collection without spending all of his money. So it was a lot of fun, and it's one of the reasons I'm doing a podcast like this is because I'm enjoying getting back into this side of the market. So in some distant future, when the Switch 2 becomes a retro handheld, I'll be really glad that I bought these games physically and I held on to them. Maybe I won't have access to the eShop anymore on that console. Maybe this will be the only way that I can enjoy it. And if so, people will be selling it for way more than $70 at that time, and that will suck. So I don't know. Am I a prepper or am I preparing for a future that is purely inevitable? This is just going to happen no matter what? Let me know how you feel about all of that, and check out the podcast. And that's it. Goodbye.